Captain Li Huan stood on the bridge of the human exploration ship, New Dawn, and watched the strange metal structure floating in space. It was huge, easily 10 times bigger than his ship. The structure looked old and broken. Parts of it were missing, and what remained was covered in strange symbols that glowed with a dim blue light. "Captain, we're getting some weak signals from that station," said Engineer Kim Tae from his control panel. "It looks like something is still working inside." Dr. Park Mira moved closer to her scanner display. Whatever is keeping that station running won't last much longer. Li Huan had been exploring space for 15 years. He had seen many abandoned alien stations before, or died out. But something about this one felt different. The way it drifted in the darkness seemed almost sad, like it was waiting for someone to find it. Any idea which species built it? Li Huan asked. Park Mira shook her head. "The design doesn't match anything in our databases. The metal looks very advanced, but the technology seems old, maybe 1,000 years or more." Kim Tae looked up from his controls. "Captain, should we just scan it and move on? We're supposed to be mapping this sector, not exploring every piece of space junk we find." They had orders to survey this part of space and report back to Earth, but something made him want to look closer. Decided, if there's nothing interesting, we'll be on our way in a few hours. The New Dawn moved slowly toward the alien station, but deep inside the station, lights were still blinking. "I'm reading life support systems," Park Myra said with surprise. "Very weak, but they're still working." "Life support for what?" Kim Tae asked. "That's what we need to find out," Li Huan said. "Prepare the docking system. We're going aboard." 20 minutes later, Li Huan, Park Myra, and Kim Tae floated through the empty corridors of the alien station. The ceiling was at least 4 meters high, and the doorways were built for beings that might be 3 meters tall. Checking her scanner, oxygen levels are low but safe. Temperature is cold, but not dangerous. They moved deeper into the station, following the power readings that Kim Tae tracked on his device. The station seemed to go on forever, with corridor after corridor leading to empty rooms. Some rooms looked like they had been living spaces. Others seemed designed for work or storage. Whatever lived here was big, Kim Tae said, looking at a doorway that towered over them. The station was very clean, even after being abandoned for so long. There was no dust or dirt anywhere. Here, the power readings were stronger. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing brighter than anywhere else they had seen. "The main power source is close," Kim Tae said. Just ahead, they followed a wider corridor that led to a massive door. The door was different from the others they had seen. It was covered in symbols that seemed to move and change as they watched. Park Mira ran her scanner over the door and gasped. "Captain, there are life signs behind this door." Li Huan felt his heart beat faster. "What kind of life signs?" "Multiple readings, small, but definitely alive, and they're weak, getting weaker." Kim Tae found a control panel beside the door. The symbols on it were glowing, but dimly. One chance. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door began to slide open with a deep, rumbling sound. The room beyond took their breath away. It was enormous, with a curved ceiling that was covered in what looked like stars. But it wasn't the size that amazed them. Inside each pod, they could see a small form floating in some kind of liquid. "My God," Park Mira whispered, "it's a nursery." They moved between the rows of pods, counting them. There were at least 60 pods, maybe more. In each one, a small creature floated peacefully. They had 4 arms, smooth gray skin, and heads that were larger than their bodies. Even as babies, they looked powerful and dangerous. "What are they?" Kim Tae asked. Park Mira was running every scan she could think of. Her face grew pale as the results came in. "Captain, I need to run these results again. I must be making a mistake." "What is it?" Li Huan asked. "According to my scans, these creatures match the genetic patterns of the Vorthok. In known space, for hundreds of years, they had conquered world after world, enslaving or destroying every species they encountered. They were bigger, stronger, and smarter than almost every other species. They hunted other intelligent beings for sport. The Vorthok had disappeared about 50 years ago. No one knew why. Their worlds had been found empty, their ships drifting in space with no crews. The Vorthok are gone. They've been gone for decades." "The scans don't lie," Park Mira said quietly. These are Vorthok infants, and they're dying. She was right. Even as they watched, some of the pods were flickering. The life support systems that had kept the babies alive for so long were finally failing. How long do they have? Li Huan asked. Park Mira checked her readings again. Maybe hours. Maybe lest the power systems are shutting down one by one. Inside each one was an infant Vorthok, the offspring of the most hated species in the galaxy. We need to contact the Galactic Council, Kim Tae said. They need to know about this. Li Huan nodded, but he couldn't stop looking at the pods. As he watched, one of the baby Vorthok opened its eyes and seemed to look right at him. The creature's eyes were large and intelligent, filled with a curiosity that seemed almost human. Prepared the communication, Park Myra continued her scans. Captain, there's something else. These babies have been in here for at least 40 years. A nursery ship, Li Huan said, understanding they knew their species was dying, so they tried to save their children. The three humans stood in the failing nursery, surrounded by the last members of the most feared species in galactic history. The babies floated peacefully in their pods, unaware that their time was running out, unaware that no one in the galaxy would want them to survive. But as Li Huan looked into those intelligent eyes, he began to wonder if the galaxy might be wrong. The message from the Galactic Council came back faster than Li Huan had expected. The response was short and clear. Destroy the station and everything in it immediately. They didn't even ask questions, Kim Tae said, reading the message again. Just destroy it. No investigation, no study, nothing. Li Huan stood in the New Dawn's communication room, staring at the screen. The Council's message was signed by representatives from 12 different species. Every single one of them wanted the same thing: the complete destruction of the Vorthok nursery. Captain, Park Myra said quietly, I've been running more tests. On the babies, they're completely healthy. Their brain development is normal for their age. There's no sign of the aggression mutations that adult Vorthok showed. What does that mean? Li Huan asked. It means they're just babies, normal babies, who happen to be Vorthok. Kim Tae shook his head. They're not normal babies, Doctor. They're the children of the most dangerous predators in galactic history. Their parents destroyed entire worlds. Their parents, Park Mira said firmly. Not them. These babies never hurt anyone. Another message arrived. This one was from Admiral Chen on Earth. Li Huan opened it and read it aloud. Captain Li, you will follow the Council's orders immediately. Destroy the alien station and return to Earth. This is a direct command from Earth Defense Command. Li Huan felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Everyone wanted him to destroy the nursery. His superiors, the Galactic Council, probably every thinking being in the galaxy. Intelligent eyes. How long do the babies have if we do nothing? He asked Park Mira. Maybe 6 hours. The life support systems are failing faster now, and if we transfer them to our ship... Captain, you're not seriously thinking about how long, Li Huan repeated. Our medical bay could keep them alive. Kim Tae stood up from his chair. Captain, you can't be serious. These are Do you know what they did to the Centauri colonies? They killed everyone. Men, women, children. They ate some of them. I know the history, Li Huan said, but that was the adults. These are babies. Babies that will grow up to be killers, Kim Tae argued. It's in their nature. Is it, Li Huan asked, or is it something they learned? Park Mira moved to her computer and brought up her scan results. Captain, I've been comparing these babies to adult Vorthok remains we have in our databases. The brain structure is different. The babies don't have the enlarged aggression centers that adult Vorthok showed. What does that mean? Kim Tae asked. It means the aggression might not be natural. It might be something that was added to them as they grew up, through training, through culture, through deliberate modification. Li Huan felt something click in his mind. You're saying they might not be natural-born killers. I'm saying we don't know, and the only way to find out is to let them live and see what happens. Kim Tae paced around the small room. This is insane. The Council will never forgive us for disobeying their orders. I know, Li Huan said quietly. We'll be outcasts. No trade, no diplomatic relations, no support if we're attacked. Humanity will be alone in the galaxy. I know then why, Kim Tae asked. Why risk everything for the children of our enemies? Li Huan walked to the window and looked out at the alien station. because that's what makes us human. We don't kill babies because we're afraid of what they might become. Another message arrived. This one was from the Alterian fleet, saying they were sending ships to make sure the station was destroyed. The Zephyrians sent a similar message. Then the Betons, saying they were coming to watch the station's destruction. Captain Kim Tae said, "We need to make a decision. Those ships will be here in less than a day." Park Myra looked up from her computer. "I've been working on the transfer procedure. We can move the babies to our ship, but it will take at least 4 hours to modify our medical systems." "And then what?" Kim Tae asked. "We run, we hide. We spend the rest of our lives protecting baby Vorthok while the entire galaxy hunts us." "If that's what it takes," Li Huan said. Kim Tae stared at his captain. "You're really going to do this?" "I am, even though it means the end of human relations with the galaxy." "Yes." "Yes." Kim Tae was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down and started working on his computer. "Then we better get started. Those modifications won't do themselves." Park Myra smiled. "You're helping us." "I think you're both crazy," Kim Tae said without looking up. "But I've served with Captain Lee for 8 years. If he thinks this is the right thing to do, then I trust him." They worked through the night. Park Myra designed the modifications to their medical bay. Kim Tae built the new life support systems. Li Huan prepared the ship for what would probably be a very difficult conversation with the incoming alien fleets. As they worked, more messages arrived. Earth Command was sending angry demands for immediate compliance. The Galactic Council was threatening to expel humanity from the galaxy. Captain Park Myra said as she worked, "What if we're wrong? What if these babies do grow up to be killers?" Li Huan thought about the question. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens, but at least we'll have given them a chance to choose who they want to be. And if they choose to be like their parents, then we'll stop them. But they deserve the chance to make that choice themselves." The transfer began at dawn. Ship time. One by one, they moved the crystal pods from the failing alien station to the New Dawn's medical bay. Each pod weighed nearly 200 kilograms, and they had to be very careful not to damage the life support systems as they worked. The first alien ships appeared on their sensors, a Battlon cruiser, followed by 2 Alterian destroyers. The ships took positions around the station and sent demands for the humans to comply with the Council's orders. "Attention human vessel," came a message from the Battlon ship. "You will cease your activities immediately and destroy the station as ordered." Li Huan opened a communication channel to all the alien ships. "This is Captain Li Huan of the human vessel New Dawn. We are transferring innocent children to safety. We will not abandon them to die." "Those are not children," the Battlon commander replied. "They are Vorthok. They must be destroyed." "They are babies," Li Huan said firmly. "Babies who have never hurt anyone." Li Huan activated the New Dawn's defensive systems. They were outnumbered and outgunned. But they had one advantage. The alien ships didn't want to accidentally damage the station before the human ship was clear of it. "How many more pods?" Li Huan asked. 12. Park Myra replied. "Maybe 30 more minutes." "We don't have 30 minutes, Kim Tae said, watching the weapon readings from the alien ships. "We'll make time," Li Huan said. He opened a channel to the entire galaxy. Every ship, every station, every world with communication equipment would receive his message. "This is Captain Li Huan of the human exploration vessel. New Dawn. We have discovered 62 infant Vorthok in a failing nursery station. These babies are innocent of their species' past crimes. They are children who deserve a chance at life." He paused, looking at his crew. Kim Tae was still working on the transfer systems. Park Myra was monitoring the baby's vital signs. Both of them had chosen to help him, even though it meant defying the entire galaxy. "The Galactic Council has ordered us to destroy these children. Every species in the galaxy wants them dead. But we are human. We do not kill babies because we are afraid of what they might become. We believe in the possibility of redemption, in the power of choice, in the chance for anyone to become better than their parents." The alien ships moved closer, their weapons charging. "We are taking responsibility for these children. We will raise them, teach them, and give them the chance to choose who they want to be. If the galaxy cannot accept this, then the galaxy will have to choose between its fear and its conscience." Li Huan closed the channel and turned to his crew. "Last pod. Captain Lee, you have 60 seconds to surrender the Vorthok infants, or we will open fire. Take us out of here. Li Wan ordered. The New Dawn moved away from the alien station, carrying its precious and dangerous cargo. Behind them, the alien ships followed. Weapons still powered, but not yet firing. As they cleared the station, Li Wan realized there was no going back. They had made their choice. Humanity had chosen compassion over fear, hope over hatred. Now they would have to live with the consequences. 3 months had passed since the New Dawn returned to Earth with its dangerous cargo. Captain Li Wan sat in a meeting room at Earth Defense Headquarters, listening to angry voices argue about his fate. "You have destroyed our relationship with the entire galaxy," General Thompson shouted, slamming his hand on the table. 6 trade agreements canceled, 12 diplomatic missions recalled. Admiral Kim looked tired. She had been defending Li Wan's decision for weeks, but the pressure was getting stronger every day. "We're losing allies we've worked decades to build." "And what about the research station?" asked Dr. Williams, the head of alien studies. "Those creatures need to be studied. We need to understand what makes them dangerous before they grow up." Li Wan had heard these arguments many times. Every day brought new meetings, new demands, new threats. Some officials wanted to hand the Vorthok babies over to the Galactic Council. Others wanted to kill them quietly and tell the galaxy it was an accident. A few wanted to study them like lab animals. "They're the offspring of the most dangerous predators in galactic history," General Thompson replied. "Children or not, they're a threat to every living being in space." Based on what? Fear, old stories. Based on this, the Vorthok destroyed 17 civilizations. They killed billions of people. They hunted other species for sport. The adult Vorthok did that, not these babies. Babies that will grow up to be just like their parents. Li Wan stood up from his chair. That's exactly the kind of thinking that kept the galaxy in war for centuries. Judging people by what their parents did instead of who they choose to be, Admiral Kim raised her hand for silence. "The decision has been made. The babies will be moved to Research Station Omega-7. Dr. Park Myra will continue her studies there." Li Wan felt his heart sink. Station Omega-7 was in the outer system, far from Earth. It was where the government sent projects they wanted to hide from the public. "You're putting them in a prison." "We're putting them somewhere safe," Admiral Kim said. "Safe for them and safe for everyone else." "What about their development, their education?" "They need social contact, not isolation." General Thompson laughed harshly. "Education? What kind of education do you give to baby predators? How to kill efficiently, how to be human," Li Wan said. The room went quiet. Dr. Williams looked confused. "They're not human, Captain. They never will be, but they can learn human values. Compassion, mercy, the difference between right and wrong, or they can learn to hide their true nature until they're strong enough to show it," General Thompson said. 2 weeks later, Li Wan stood on the observation deck of Station Omega. They were now the size of human 5-year-olds, though they were much stronger and faster. The lead baby, the one Li Wan had first seen open its eyes, was the most advanced. Park Myra had named him Han Sol. He was learning to walk and was beginning to make sounds that might become speech. His large eyes followed every movement, taking in everything around him. "How are they developing?" Li Wan asked. Park Myra smiled, but she looked tired. "Faster than we expected, their brains are developing at an incredible rate. Han Sol is already showing problem-solving skills equal to a human 8-year-old, and the aggression. That's the interesting part. They show normal infant behavior. They're curious, playful, sometimes frustrated when they can't do something, but no unusual aggression, no predatory instincts." Li Wan watched Han Sol play with a simple puzzle toy. The young Vorthok's forearms moved with careful precision, fitting pieces together with focused concentration. When he solved the puzzle, he looked up at Park Myra with what could only be described as pride. "He wants approval," Li Wan observed. "They all do. They're social creatures, just like human children. They want attention, affection, praise when they do well. But the research reports going to Earth say they're dangerous." Park Myra's expression darkened. "Those reports are written by Dr. Williams' team. They're looking for evidence of danger, so that's what they find. Every normal infant behavior gets labeled as potential predatory development. What do you mean? But the report called it early dominance display, indicating future aggressive tendencies. Li Yuan shook his head. They've already decided what these children are going to become. The worst part is, it might become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we treat them like monsters, they might become monsters. On the other side of the galaxy, the consequences of humanity's choice were becoming clear. The Galactic Council had voted to place economic sanctions on all human worlds. Trade ships were turned away from alien ports. Human diplomats were expelled from other species' territories. The Battalan Empire announced that any human ship entering their space would be destroyed. The Altarian Federation closed their borders completely. Even species that had been friendly with humans for decades were cutting all contact. On Earth, protests filled the streets. Some people demanded that the government surrender the Vorthok babies to save human civilization. Others supported the decision to protect the children. The planet was dividing into two camps: those who believed in giving the babies a chance, and those who thought humanity had doomed itself for nothing. Engineer Kim Tae, now assigned to Station Omega-7, worked to improve the facility's systems. The station had been built for research, not for raising children. Everything needed to be modified to be safe for the growing Vorthok. The reinforced walls are finished, he reported to Li Yuan. Kim Tae paused in his work. I don't know what to expect anymore, Captain. These babies are growing so fast, learning so quickly. Sometimes I watch Han Sol and I see intelligence that's almost frightening. He understands things he shouldn't understand. Yesterday, I was working on a complex engineering problem. Han Sol watched me for maybe 10 minutes, then pointed to the solution. He was right. Li Yuan had noticed the same thing. The young Vorthok were developing mental abilities that far exceeded normal children. Their memory was perfect. They learned new concepts after seeing them only once. They could solve problems that challenged adult humans. Maybe that's why their species became so dangerous, Kim Tae said. Not because they were naturally evil, but because they were so much smarter than everyone else. She lived in New Seoul, where anti-Vorthok protests had been particularly violent. Juan, you need to see what's happening here, she wrote. People are scared. They're angry. Some are calling for your arrest. Others are saying you're a hero. The government is talking about declaring martial law because of the riots. Yesterday, someone threw a rock through my window because I defended what you did. But I still think you were right. Those babies deserve a chance to live, no matter what their parents were like. But I'm worried about what happens next. We're alone, and we're protecting something that most people think will destroy us. How long can we keep this up? Li Yuan read the message twice, then walked to the nursery section of the station. Through the transparent walls, he could see the young Vorthoks sleeping in their beds. They looked so peaceful, so innocent. Han Sol was awake, sitting up in his bed and looking directly at Li Yuan. The young Vorthok tilted his head, as if asking a question. Then he raised one of his forehands and waved. Li Yuan waved back, and Han Sol seemed to smile. It was an expression of pure happiness, the kind of joy any child might show when greeting someone they cared about. I hope we're doing the right thing, Li Yuan whispered to himself. Behind him, Dr. Park Myra approached quietly. Whatever their species did in the past, these ones are different. They're kind, curious, eager to learn if we can raise them right, if we can survive long enough to raise them at all, Li Yuan replied. The next morning brought news that changed everything. The Kethmori Empire, a species known for enslaving other races, had begun moving fleets toward human space. They had stayed quiet during the Vorthok crisis, but now they saw an opportunity. With humanity isolated from the galaxy, with no allies to call for help, the Kethmori were preparing to attack. They wanted to add human worlds to their empire, and they knew no one would come to help the species that had defied the Galactic Council. How long do we have? Li Yuan asked Admiral Kim during an emergency communication. 6 months, maybe less. They're gathering ships from across their territory. It will be the largest fleet they've ever assembled. Li Yuan looked out at the stars, thinking about the choice he had made. By saving 62 baby sharing toys and helping each other with their games, he knew he would make the same choice again. The question now was whether humanity would survive long enough for these children to prove that redemption was possible. 5 years had passed since the rescue. What once looked like a cold research facility now felt more like a school mixed with a home. Colorful drawings covered the walls. Toys were scattered in corners. The sound of laughter echoed through corridors that used to be silent. Dr. Park Mira sat in the main classroom, watching her students work on their lessons. The young Vorthok were now the size of human teenagers, though they had only lived for 5 years. Maybe they were reaching their adult size. Han Sol sat at the front of the class, helping a smaller Vorthok named Jin-A with her mathematics. His 4 arms moved gently as he showed her how to solve the problem. He clapped all 4 hands together in celebration. "Very good, Jin-A," Park Mira said. "Han Sol, thank you for being such a good teacher." Han Sol's face showed pride, but also something else. Lately, Park Mira had noticed him becoming more serious, more thoughtful. He was starting to ask difficult questions about his species and their history. Engineer Kim Tae entered the classroom, carrying a new device he had built. "Who wants to learn about gravity generators today?" All the young Vorthok raised their hands. Eagerly, Kim Tae had become their favorite teacher for anything mechanical or technical. His patient explanations and hands-on demonstrations made even the most complex ideas easy to understand. "Uncle Tae," said a young Vorthok named Bo Ram, "can you show us how to build one?" Kim Tae smiled. Over the years, all the children had started calling him Uncle Tae. He had been against saving them at first. Without them, maybe when you're older, Bo Ram. "These devices are very dangerous if built wrong, right?" They were always careful, always responsible. Sometimes it surprised him how mature they acted compared to human children their age. After the lessons ended, Park Mira walked with Han Sol through the station's garden area. She had convinced the Earth government to build this space so that children could see growing things and experience nature even in their artificial home. "Dr. Park," Han Sol said quietly, "I've been reading the historical files about my species." Park Mira felt her heart skip. She had known this day would come. "What did you learn?" "That adult Vorthok did terrible things. They killed many people. They destroyed worlds." Han Sol's voice was sad. "Were they evil?" Park Mira chose her words carefully. "They did evil things. But I don't think they were born evil. I think they were taught to be that way. Could we become like them?" "Do you want to hurt people, Han Sol?" "No," he said immediately. "The idea of hurting someone makes me feel sick inside. When Jin-A fell last week and cut her arm, I wanted to help her, not hurt her more." "Then, you're already different from your ancestors." Han Sol was quiet for a moment, thinking. But what if the other humans are right? Just by existing, every person chooses who they want to be. "Park," Mira said, "human, Vorthok, or any other species." That evening, Captain Lee Wan arrived at the station for his monthly visit. The children always got excited when he came. To them, he was the human who had saved their lives. Captain Lee, Jin-A, ran up to him as soon as he entered the main hall. "Look what I painted. We're all friends in my picture," Wan said, lifting her up with his arms. Despite her size, she still enjoyed being carried like a small child. Han Sol approached more slowly. They walked to Li Huan's office. The adults had tried to keep news of the Kethmori threat away from the children. "How do you know about that?" "I hear things. I see the worried looks on people's faces. Uncle Tae has been building weapons, not just tools. Dr. Park cries sometimes when she thinks no one is watching." Li Huan sighed. The young Vorthok were too intelligent to hide things from for long. "Yes, there's a war coming. The Kethmori Empire wants to conquer human worlds because humanity is alone. Because you saved us." Han Sol was quiet for a long moment. "My brothers and sisters and I have been talking. We want to help." "Help how?" Li Huan felt ice in his stomach. "Han Sol, you're children. We would never ask you to fight in a war. But what if we chose to fight? What if we wanted to protect the people who saved us?" "I would say no. Your job is to grow up, to learn, to become the people you want to be, not to fight in wars." Han Sol looked frustrated. "But if humans lose this war, what happens to us? What happens to our future?" A Kethmori scouting fleet had attacked the human colony on Kepler 438b. The attack was swift and brutal. 30,000 colonists were dead or captured. Cut off. How long until their main fleet arrives? Admiral Kim asked during the emergency meeting. 3 months, replied Admiral Santos. Maybe less. They're moving faster than we expected. What about our defenses? We have 47 ships. Ready for combat, they have over 300. The room was quiet. Everyone knew the numbers. Humanity was going to lose this war. We could surrender, suggested General Park, negotiate terms, maybe save some of our people. They conquer completely. Our people would become slaves. Captain Li Huan listened to the discussion with growing despair. The human fleet was brave and well-trained, but they were vastly outnumbered. Even if they fought perfectly, they would lose. After the meeting, he returned to Station Omega 7. The children were having dinner together, talking and laughing, like any normal family. They had no idea that their world was about to change forever. Park Mira joined him in the observation area. The children know something is wrong. They're asking more questions every day, that the people who saved them are about to be destroyed, that their future is disappearing. Li Huan watched Han Sol help serve food to the younger children. The young Vorthok was always taking care of others, always thinking about their needs. Before his own, Park Mira, in your professional opinion, are they dangerous? She looked surprised by the question. Could they hurt someone if they wanted to? Physically, yes. They're incredibly strong and fast, but emotionally, psychologically, they're the gentlest beings I've ever known. They cry when they accidentally step on insects. But if someone threatened their family, if someone tried to hurt the people they love, Park Mira was quiet for a long moment. I think they would do anything to protect the people they care about, just like humans would. That night, Li Huan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Han Sol's offer to help fight the war. The young Vorthok were strong, fast, and incredibly intelligent. In a straight fight, one of them might be worth 10 human soldiers. But they were also innocent. They had never hurt anyone. He asked children to fight a war, even to save humanity. Could he risk turning them into the very thing their ancestors had been? As he stared out at the stars, Li Huan realized that the choice might not be his to make. The young Vorthok were growing up fast, and they were starting to make their own decisions about who they wanted to be. The question was, when the time came to choose between protecting their human family and staying safe, what would they decide? And would humanity survive to see the answer? The alarm woke everyone on Station Omega 7 at 3 in the morning. Red lights flashed in the corridors as the emergency signal echoed through the facility. Han Sol was the first of the young Vorthok to reach the main communication room with his brothers and sisters close behind. Captain Li Huan stood in front of the large screen, his face pale. The image showed burning buildings and smoke rising from what used to be the human colony on Ross 128b. Bodies lay in the streets, ships burned in the sky. What happened? Han Sol asked quietly. Li Huan turned to see all 62 young Vorthok standing behind him. They had grown so much over the past 5 years. They were as tall as adult humans now, but still had the curious, caring expressions of the children he had first saved. The Kethmori attacked another colony, Li Huan said. 50,000 people are dead. Jin A stepped forward. At 5 years old, she was one of the youngest, but she was brave and smart, like all her siblings. Why are they doing this? Because they want to own everything. They want to make all humans into slaves. And no one will help? Asked Bo-Rem. No. The other species in the galaxy are still angry with us for saving you. They won't help us fight. Han Sol moved closer to the screen, studying the images of destruction. His 4 hands clenched into fists. How many more colonies will they attack? All of them, Li Huan said honestly. They won't stop until every human world is under their control, including Earth. The young Vorthok exchanged looks. They had their own way of communicating, with small gestures and expressions that the humans had learned to recognize over the years. It was like watching a silent conversation. Finally, Han Sol spoke for all of them. We want to help. Han Sol, we've talked about this. You're not soldiers. You're young people with your whole lives ahead of you. What lives? Janae asked. If the Kethmori win, what kind of lives will we have? Dr. Park Mira entered the room, still wearing her nightclothes. She had been woken by the alarm like everyone else. Children, you should go back to your rooms. This isn't something you need to worry about. Dr. Park Han Sol said gently, we're not children anymore, and this is exactly something we need to worry about. He was right. Over the past year, the young Vorthok had grown not just in size, but in maturity. They understood complex ideas, solved difficult problems, and made decisions like adults. Calling them children was becoming harder to justify. The human fleet will protect Earth, Park Myra said. Admiral Santos has good ships and good people. 47 ships against 300, Bo-Ram said. We heard Uncle Tay talking about the numbers. The humans can't win. Kim Tay entered the room carrying a tablet full of technical data. The Kethmori main fleet will be here in 6 weeks. Maybe less. He stopped when he saw all the young Vorthok staring at him. What's going on? They want to fight, Lee Wan said. Kim Tay looked at the young Vorthok he had helped raise. These beings who called him uncle, who got excited when he showed them how machines worked, who brought him drawings they had made. Kids, you don't understand what war is really like. We understand that people we love are going to die, Hansol said. We understand that the species who saved us is about to be destroyed. We understand that we have abilities that could help, but everyone wants us to hide while our family fights alone. You could get hurt. You could get killed. So could you. So could Captain Lee. So could Dr. Park. Should we ask you to hide while we fight? Kim Tay didn't have an answer for that. The next few weeks were the hardest in Li Huan's life. The young Vorthok didn't argue or complain about the decision to keep them out of the war, but they stopped acting like children. They spent their time studying military tactics, learning about Kethmori technology, and practicing with their physical abilities. Hansol became their unofficial leader, organizing training sessions where they learned to work together as a team. They were incredibly fast and strong, but more importantly, they thought and moved like a single unit. They're preparing to fight whether we want them to or not. Park Myra told Lee Wan as they watched the young Vorthok practice in the stations. Gymnasium, I know. Maybe we should consider it. They're not human children. They mature differently. In some ways, they're already adults. In some ways, but in others, they're still innocent. They've never hurt anyone. They don't really understand what violence means. Neither did human soldiers before their first battle. Li Huan watched Hansol demonstrate a complex movement pattern to his siblings. The young Vorthok learned it perfectly after seeing it just once. Their coordination was incredible. If we let them fight, we might save humanity, Li Huan said. But we might also turn them into the very thing their ancestors were: predators, killers. And if we don't let them fight, humanity might die. And they'll spend the rest of their lives as slaves, or worse. The debate ended when the Kethmori fleet arrived early. The attack began on a Tuesday morning. Kethmori ships dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the solar system and immediately began moving toward Earth. The human fleet met them near Mars orbit. On Station Omega 7, everyone gathered around the communication screens. To watch the battle, the young Vorthok stood together, their faces showing anger and fear as they watched human ships being destroyed. The Braveheart is gone, Kim Tay reported, reading the tactical display. The Freedom's light is badly damaged. How many ships have we lost? Park Myra asked. 12 so far. The Kethmori have only lost 3. Admiral Santos's voice came over the communication system. All stations, this is Fleet Command. The enemy has broken through our outer defenses. They're heading for Earth. Janae started crying. Bo-Ram put his arms around her, but his own eyes were filled with tears. These humans were their family, and their family was losing. Hansol stepped forward. Captain Lee, I'm asking one more time. Let us help. Hansol, please. The young Vorthok's voice was steady, but Li Wan could hear the emotion underneath. You saved us when we were helpless babies. You raised us, taught us, loved us. Now let us save you. Li Wan looked at the 62 young faces staring at him. They were scared, but they were also determined. They had made their choice, and nothing he said was going to change their minds. If you fight, he said slowly, you'll have to kill. You'll have to hurt people. That will change you forever. If we don't fight, the people we love will die. That will change us too. You don't know what you're asking. Hansol's expression was sad but firm. We know exactly what we're asking. We're asking for the chance to protect our family. On the screen, another human ship exploded in a ball of fire. The Kethmori fleet was getting closer to Earth with every minute. Li Huan closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. Kim Tay prepared the shuttles. Dr. Park helped them get ready. He opened his eyes and looked at Hansol. God help us all, but you're going to war. The young Vorthok didn't cheer or celebrate. They simply nodded and began moving with purpose. They had been preparing for this moment for weeks. As they left to get ready, Han Sol stopped beside Li Wan Han. "Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for being better than your ancestors." "We learned from the best teachers," Han Sol said, and Li Huan knew he meant all the humans who had raised them. An hour later, 62 young Vorthok boarded shuttles heading for the battle zone. They were going to war to save the species that had saved them. The question now was whether they would remain the gentle, caring beings they had been raised to be, or whether the violence of war would awaken something darker in their nature. Either way, the fate of humanity now rested in the hands of the children of their greatest enemies. The Kethmori commander Vexcrawl stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching human ships burn in the darkness of space. The battle was going exactly as planned. The human fleet was brave but hopelessly outnumbered. In a few hours, Earth would surrender. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting 62 small ships approaching from the outer system. Human reinforcements. Unknown design. Very small, like shuttles, but moving at incredible speed." Crawl studied the display. The small ships were moving faster than anything should be able to move. They seemed to be heading straight for his fleet with no regard for safety or tactics. Probably desperate refugees trying to escape, he decided. Ignore them. Focus on the human military ships. It was the last mistake he would ever make. Han Sol sat in the pilot seat of his shuttle, watching the Kethmori fleet grow larger on his screen. Behind him, his brothers and sisters prepared for battle in their own ships. They had practiced this many times in simulation, but this was real. "Remember," he spoke into his communication device, "we are not here to be like our ancestors. We are here to protect our family. We disable their ships when possible. We kill only when we must." "Understood, brother," came Jinae's voice. Even in the middle of approaching battle, she sounded calm and determined. "Uncle Tay's modifications are working perfectly," reported Bo Ram from his ship. "All systems show green." Kim Tae had spent weeks upgrading their shuttles with human technology and Vorthok improvements. The result was ships that could move and turn like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. "Beginning attack run," Han Sol announced. What happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. The young Vorthok moved through the Kethmori fleet like ghosts. Their ships were too small and too fast for the enemy weapons to track. But more importantly, they fought with a precision and intelligence that seemed impossible. Han Sol's shuttle dove between two massive Kethmori destroyers. Instead of firing weapons, he used a focused electromagnetic pulse that Kim Tae had taught him to build. The pulse disabled both ships' engines without killing anyone aboard. Jinae targeted the communications arrays on enemy ships, cutting off their ability to coordinate their attacks. Bo Rem and his team focused on weapon systems. Carefully disabling guns and missile launchers, they moved like a dance. Each young Vorthok knowing exactly where the others would be. When one ship was in danger, 3 others would appear to help. When an enemy ship tried to run, they would be there to stop it. But they weren't just fast and coordinated. They were smart. Han Sol had studied every battle the Kethmori had ever fought. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their favorite tricks. When the enemy tried to surround the human ships, the young Vorthok were already in position to break the trap. "How are they doing this?" Admiral Santos asked from his command ship. He had been fighting space battles for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like this. "They're not fighting like individual pilots," his tactical officer said with amazement. "They're fighting like a single organism with 62 parts." On the Kethmori flagship, Commander Crawl watched his fleet being torn apart by tiny ships piloted by unknown enemies. "What are those things?" "Unknown, sir, but they're not human. Our scans show the pilots are much larger and stronger than humans. Are they fighting for the humans?" "It appears so, sir." Crawl felt ice in his stomach. The Kethmori Empire had conquered dozens of species, but they had always fought enemies who acted like they expected. These new fighters were completely different. All ships concentrate fire on the small craft. Ignore the human ships for now, but concentrating fire on the young Vorthok was like trying to catch lightning. They were everywhere and nowhere, appearing just long enough to disable another ship, before vanishing again. The battle that should have been over in hours stretched into a full day. The young Vorthok fought without rest, without making mistakes, without losing a single ship. More importantly, they fought with mercy. When a Kethmori ship was disabled, the young Vorthok moved in to rescue the crew before the ship could explode. When enemy pilots were captured, they were treated with kindness and medical care. When the Kethmori tried to surrender, the young Vorthok accepted immediately. "Sir," a young Kethmori officer said to Commander Krall, "maybe we should consider surrender. We've lost over half our fleet. Never. The Kethmori do not surrender." But even as he said it, Krall knew the battle was lost. These strange new fighters had turned what should have been an easy victory into a complete disaster. The end came when Han Solo's shuttle approached the flagship directly. Krall ordered all weapons to fire on the small ship, but it moved like it could see the future, avoiding every shot. The shuttle attached itself to the flagship's hull. A few minutes later, Krall felt the ship shake as something very strong began tearing through the outer walls. "Sir, something is cutting through the hull near the bridge. Send security teams." "Sir, we've already sent them. They're not responding." A section of the bridge wall suddenly fell inward. Through the hole stepped a being that Krall had only seen in historical records. It was tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and intelligent, but filled with a sadness that seemed very old. "You are Commander Krall," the being said in perfect Kethmori language. "What are you?" "I am Han Solo. I am Vorthok." Krall felt terror fill his heart. The Vorthok had been the most feared predators in galactic history. "If they had returned, you will order your fleet to surrender," Han Solo said calmly. "Your war against humanity is over. The Kethmori do not surrender to anyone. Then you will die here, and your people will continue to die until they choose differently." Krall looked into those large, intelligent eyes and saw something that surprised him. There was no anger there, no joy and violence. There was only determination and sadness. "If I surrender, what happens to my people?" "They will be treated with the same mercy humanity has always shown. They will be fed, cared for, and eventually allowed to return home. But they will not be allowed to attack innocent people anymore. And if I refuse, then I will disable your ship, and your second in command will make the same choice. And if they refuse, their replacement will choose. Eventually, someone will choose mercy over pride." Krall stared at this young Vorthok, this being whose ancestors had terrorized the galaxy. But this one was different. This one offered mercy, even to enemies. "Very well," Krall said quietly. "I surrender." The war ended that day. The Kethmori fleet surrendered to the combined human and Vorthok forces. True to Han Solo's word, the enemy crews were treated well, fed, and cared for, and eventually returned to their home worlds. But more importantly, the galaxy had witnessed something unprecedented. The children of the most feared predators in history had fought not for conquest, but for protection. They had shown mercy to enemies, kindness to prisoners, and wisdom beyond their years. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within days. Species that had shunned humanity for years began to send messages of congratulation and requests for new diplomatic relations. Dr. Park, Mira stood in the main hall of Station Omega 7, watching the young Vorthok return from their first and hopefully last battle. They looked tired but unharmed. More importantly, they still looked like the gentle, caring beings she had helped raise. Han Solo approached her with something in his hands. It was a small flowering plant he had somehow found time to pick from the station's garden. "For you," he said simply, "to thank you for teaching us that strength should be used to protect, not to harm." Park Mira took the flower and felt tears run down her face. "You did something incredible out there. You saved humanity." "Humanity saved us first," Han Solo replied. "We just returned the favor. What will you do now?" Han Solo looked around at his brothers and sisters, who were being welcomed home by Kim Tae and the other humans who had helped raise them. "We'll do what any family does. We'll live together, learn together, and take care of each other. And if the galaxy needs your help again, then we'll help. But we'll do it the way you taught us, with compassion, wisdom, and mercy." 6 months later, Captain Lee Wan stood before the Galactic Council, addressing representatives from dozens of species. The same chamber that had once ordered him to destroy the Vorthok children now wanted to honor both humanity and the young Vorthok for their courage. The question before us today, Li Wan said, is not whether we were right to save these children. The question is what we learned from their choice to save us. He looked out at the assembled representatives, beings from across the galaxy who had once turned their backs on helpless infants. We learned that compassion is stronger than fear. We learned that who we choose to become matters more than what we are born as. Most importantly, we learned that even the children of our greatest enemies can become our greatest allies if we give them the chance. The vote to welcome both humanity and the young Vorthok back into the galactic community was unanimous. Years later, when historians wrote about the Kethmori War, they would call it the moment when the galaxy learned the difference between justice and revenge, but those who lived through it knew it by a simpler name. The moment when 62 children chose to be better than their ancestors, and in doing so, redeemed not just themselves, but the entire concept of redemption. Hansel, now a respected leader in the galactic community, would often visit schools across human space. Children would ask him how he became a hero, and he would always give the same answer. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who was lucky enough to be raised by people who believed that everyone deserves a chance to choose who they want to be. And in that choice, both humanity and the young Vorthok had found their true strength, not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to forgive, to nurture, and to hope for a better future. The galaxy was safer because 62 children had chosen love over hate, protection over conquest, and mercy over vengeance. They had become exactly what their human family had always believed they could be, not the heirs of their ancestors' darkness, but the promise of a brighter tomorrow.